have Marwa. She has turned up and we are going to have a lovely conversation today. Marwa has been on the show before and she was talking about being involved in writing a section of a book and talking about her experience coming to Australia and not fitting in. So that was a really interesting conversation that we had then. And today I thought, because it's Ramadan and I don't really have a good understanding of it, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't, I thought we could share a little bit of information today about Ramadan and let you know what's expected, what goes on, why, what happens, and all those things. Today we're having a conversation in regards to you are from Egyptian descent. You now live in Australia. You've been here for around 15 years. You moved to Melbourne at the beginning of 2019, and that was a big move because there was a lot of things that you had to move, all your event stuff, move home, move your children, move your whole life basically to Melbourne. What was that experience like?
Hello, Faye. Thank you so much initially for having me on the show today. It's so fabulous to be back here again, sharing another experience. Well, I recently moved to Melbourne just right before Christmas.
Right, yes.
Yes, so we did actually celebrate Christmas here this year, and it's so fabulous to be able to celebrate Christmas around the beach.
Oh, yes.
Just beautiful. I basically uprooted myself, my business, my young family, and moved them to Melbourne after deciding a few years ago that this would be where I'd live for the next stage of life. I'm always thinking ahead as an event planner and as the person responsible for the welfare of the family, like a lot of females are. Mm-hmm. I thought Melbourne would be the best next step for my children and for the business to grow end-to-end events in the Melbourne community, which is so diverse.
Beautiful. And you have run in the past an event called Egypt on a Plate. Thank you. I could think of the last bit, but I couldn't think of the first bit. Egypt on a Plate. Now, that's a huge task on its own, really, isn't it?
Yes. So last year in 2018, before I moved permanently, I decided to connect with the Egyptian community and the diverse Australian community in Melbourne by actually showcasing how we celebrate Ramadan back home in Egypt, because Ramadan is huge, just like Christmas.
Yes.
And I just wanted to showcase the unique point of view of Egyptian culture and cuisine.
Oh, the cuisine. Oh, my goodness. You don't go to a cafe or restaurant, Egyptian restaurant, and eat just a couple of things. You have masses of food. It is like, there's two people. The first experience I had, Marwa took me to the Egyptian restaurant because I'd not been. And their food just kept coming out and coming out and coming out. And I'm thinking, there's no way I can eat all this food. So I took home the hugest doggy bag I've ever taken in my life. It was massive. But the experience of the food and the cuisine and having a conversation with the chef and learning about where some of the recipes come from and how old these recipes are and how they source the ingredients that they get to keep creating these recipes that go back centuries, some of them, is quite incredible. So if you want to experience a different culture, go to an Egyptian restaurant and have a conversation with the chef if that's able to happen. Not always does that happen. But they can share stories about why they cook the food, what's the meaning of the actual food that you're eating or a particular recipe that they do. Some of the things I will eat, and there are some things that I will not eat. But it is interesting, and I suppose that's like it in every culture here in Australia. You know, you can eat sheep's brains and liver and all sorts of things. I mean, offal. You can eat all that sort of thing. So I suppose it's no different, really. It's just how it's prepared, with love and all sorts of things, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. So there's a lot of different things and different animals that you can eat, animals and non-animals.
Yes.
And they all have a story, and everything is prepared differently.
Yes.
But Egyptian cuisine really focuses on real rich ingredients that are fulfilling.
Yes.
You cannot walk away hungry.
Never.
And it's really about conversations you have around the dinner table, which are so important in Egyptian culture.
Absolutely. And that is in several different cultures, isn't it? That
Yes.
you bring your family together, and that's where the conversation takes place, around the table while you're eating and enjoying and celebrating the food that's on the table. Now, we're here to talk about Ramadan, and that goes for 30 days. You fast during the day when it's daylight, and when it gets dark or at a certain time, you are allowed to eat, have a banquet, and continue to eat until a certain time in the morning, and then you fast for the rest of the day. Talk to me about the hours that Ramadan, you're fasting.
So Ramadan happens, and it runs with the Arabic calendar. So it moves every year, goes forward. So sometimes you'll have it in winter, and sometimes it'll hit summer.
Right.
Right at the moment, we're in autumn. It's actually quite mild, and it's a beautiful time to fast because the days are not very long. So we basically fast from sunrise to sunset, and it's 12 hours. At the moment, which is fabulous. So you
could sleep all day and then wake up and eat all night.
Yes, but that is not the purpose.
Okay. All right.
So you're fasting from food, drink, and you're actually really tapping into your spirituality, trying to reconnect with yourself, with your higher self, and be more forgiving and be a better person in general. This is what Ramadan is about.
Okay, so you touched on a few things there. It's actually learning about who you are as a person when you're fasting through the day. So are you allowed to drink water?
No water.
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. So you go completely the whole day with absolutely nothing, and then you have a banquet in the evening when sunset.
Yes, definitely. So the idea is it's kind of like a body cleanse as well.
Yes.
So spiritual and body cleanse.
Yeah.
It's like restarting your body once a year.
Yep.
And it eliminates a lot of toxins out of your body.
Yes.
If you have ever experienced fasting, you would know that you actually feel much calmer without food and drink.
Yes, because there are a lot of foods that can hype you up or bloat you or whatever. I mean, it affects different people in different ways. So therefore, you look at food. But fasting, monks fast, don't they?
Yes.
Yes. And yeah, so from sunrise to sunset, you fast, and then you have a banquet between sunset and sunrise.
Yes.
And is there anything in particular that you cannot eat?
So being a Muslim religion, you would be avoiding pork and pork products, but you can eat basically everything else and obviously alcohol.
Yeah.
So when you actually break your fast, you have to take it slow. It's like basically running a marathon, and then you just take a few sips of water. So this is exactly the same thing. Your body has been shut down for a while, and when you give it back energy and food, you do that slowly.
Right.
So
it's not actually sitting down and stuffing yourself with food. It's actually sitting down graciously and enjoying and, eating a little bit at a time and building it up.
Yes, definitely. But there are certain things that you eat. I spoke about previously dates and their importance in Middle Eastern culture and in a lot of other cultures. But it goes back to the time of the Prophet. So it is recommended that you break your fast with a date. It can be 1 date, it can be 3 dates, it can be 5 dates. But usually people stop at 1 or 3.
Right.
And if you would drink something with it, it would be either a cup of milk, some water, or coffee, Arabian coffee.
Oh,
that's very popular.
Right.
Or normal coffee.
So with dates, do they have to be done in a certain way, or they can be just done as
just natural raw
just
dates?
Natural.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So dates first. What is the meaning? Is there a meaning behind that particular food?
It's because dates are known to have folic acids and they contain a lot of nutrients, and they've got a form of sugar that the body digests easily, but yet it's very good for your health.
Okay. So once you do that, now that is every day that you start with dates and water or a glass of milk or coffee.
Yes.
Coffee that you can stand your spoon up in and your spoon goes whoop, like this because it's so strong?
Up to you. I just have a milk-based coffee with
Right.
my dates.
Right.
This is actually how I break my fast every day.
Okay.
And you would say a prayer.
A prayer.
Yeah.
Is there a particular prayer that you would say, or is it entirely up to the individual?
It's a particular prayer that you would say. It's about bringing the thirst has gone and the veins will be moistened. It's just something that you say to welcome the food into your body again.
Okay.
But you are also welcome to pray for anything else,
Right.
like that you would like.
So it's a choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
You do that and that together.
Right.
So the 2 prayers together.
2 prayers together.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you've eaten that, is there another process after that, or is it then just get into some more food and eat more food?
So you've got to pace yourself.
Yes.
So it's recommended after you have the dates and coffee to go pray.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a prayer, but there's praying as well. So Muslims are supposed to pray 5 times a day. Yes, one of the prayers is around the sunset. And it says the reason why you would pray and then go back to eat is it actually gives you also time for that effect of the dates to flow into your body.
And digest.
And
yes.
digest.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd go back and then you wouldn't have, the effect of eating straight away.
Right. Okay. So how long does prayer go for before you eat next? It doesn't matter. It just depends on the individuals or the family, or do the family usually come together and pray together? So they break their fast all together?
Yes, that would be correct.
Yes.
And if you are at a friend's or a community or wherever you are, it's encouraged to pray in a group, because when you pray in a group, it actually, obviously like Mass, it's better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when you go into the season of Ramadan, and it does go for 30 days.
29 to 30.
29 to 30, depending on the moon?
The moon, that is correct.
Yep. Okay. So when Ramadan starts, it is the beginning of a moon?
I think it's a crescent.
Crescent, like a banana shape.
Yes, it's a crescent.
Okay.
And so you would sight the crescent, or people like similar to priests, a sheikh or a body, responsible of sharing that they've seen the crescent, would sight the crescent. And obviously, like now, they can know a fair bit in advance because of all the technological advances. But then they would share that tomorrow is the start of Ramadan, and they would also share when the end of Ramadan is based on the full moon.
Based on the full moon?
Yes.
Right, because there's a full moon now.
I am not 100% I can't speak on that topic specifically
Yeah.
about the moon,
Yeah,
but I know
might
when
be different
yes,
phases
yes,
of
yes,
the moon and what happens
yes,
there.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, yes.
Because I was looking at it and I'm thinking it's a full moon. Okay.
Maybe 3/4. We're
Halfway through.
almost half. Tomorrow would be halfway
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
the month, so it's going to come into a full moon. So maybe where you're standing would be different.
Okay. And with Ramadan and women and men, what's the expectations? What with women who are pregnant, children, all the older adults, the sick, those people, are they expected to fast as well?
So Ramadan is really about how much you can give. And there are definitely exceptions to people who are old and are on medication, or if you have a terminal illness and fasting will affect you. You're exempted. Pregnant women, breastfeeding women, and the time of the month for every woman, you're exempted from fasting, as well as young children. Young children, they are trained to fast. So they can be trained to fast from, some people train them young, it depends on the family. But they're not really expected to fast before they actually hit puberty.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And when they hit puberty, and that can be at different stages for all,
Yes.
then they start
Yes.
to participate.
So
And-
from 12 years old
12
really
years.
is the expected kind
Right.
of, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And how do you introduce it to your children, Ramadan, and how do you educate them with it? I suppose because you're the parent and you're doing it, they would see what you're doing as they're growing up anyway.
Yes.
And know that it's an expectation for them to actually participate when they get to a certain age.
Yes.
What sort of questions do they ask? And do they ask why we have to do this? What is it? What's the reason? All that sort of stuff?
Yes, definitely they do. But Ramadan is a celebration. So in my home, I make sure I bring all the elements of the celebration into the home with lanterns, with decoration, just like Christmas.
Right.
And my children actually really love that time of year. I don't expect them to fast during school days, and just because they are at school and they're quite young.
Yes.
But on the weekends, they want to get up late in the middle of the night and have suhoor, which is the meal that we have before we start fasting.
Right.
And they want to fast because they can see that their parents are doing it. Yeah, so they actually ask, of course they'd ask why, and we share why this is, why we do this. It is one of the main pillars of Islam,
Yes.
Fasting. And really the reason also behind it is so you can feel the pain of people that go without food and drink.
Yes. And there's a lot of those in the world these days
Yes, definitely.
that fast and not because they choose to, because it is just how life is for them.
Yes, and so they would appreciate what they have more, and also it actually teaches you gratitude for every little thing you have. And I always tell my children, if they're fasting and when they do decide to fast, that your hunger and your pain will end at sunset, while some people will go
And never
fasting
end.
and don't know when their next meal will come from and where it will come from.
That's right. And you see a lot of people living on the streets these days, and where do their meals come from? And you sometimes see people looking in the rubbish bins to find food, and it's just not a nice thing to see, is it? So you are supporting and celebrating that. When you wake up or your children wake up in the middle of the night, you mentioned a particular food. What was that again?
So it's a meal. So we have iftar, which is the time you break your fast.
Right.
And then suhoor. Suhoor is the time you actually eat a meal and then stop. Yeah, then you start fasting.
Right.
It's the later you have it, the better.
Right.
So at the moment in Melbourne and in Australia, you can have it you can start eating probably at 5, but as long as you're done by 5:30 or right before 5:30, then you're fine. So it's like basically having an early breakfast.
Right.
But in different parts of the world, depending on the sunset, it will be different. It could be at 2 a.m., that you have to get up and eat.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
and Marwa is of Egyptian descent, and we are having a conversation about Ramadan and talking about the fasting, who can do it, when you start, what age you start, who can be, doesn't have to participate, and that could be someone who is on medication or has an illness, or you're an older adult and not quite frail and can't do it. If you're pregnant or you're breastfeeding, or if it's that certain time of the month of menstruation for women, then you don't fast. What other things prevent you? Is there any more things for women that they don't fast?
Travel. So that's men and women.
Right.
So travel in general, I shared recently as well that there's guidelines. It has to be long distance travel, like you're not going from one side of Melbourne to the other.
Oh,
really.
right, yes.
And for a reason, you're not just traveling just so you can skip fast.
Get away from not having any food.
Yes. Travel is one of them. And no, it's really mainly relating to health. So if you're up for it.
Right.
So if you're not up for it, our religion says, God is kind, so he understands, but you've got to be willing to try.
Have a go.
Yeah.
And that is anything in life, really, isn't
Yes.
it? Doesn't matter what it is. You can have a go at it. If you're not good at it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean to say that you can't be good at something.
Yes.
Or do some good for a purpose or a reason.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you're not able to fast, it is recommended that you actually feed a person who would need food, like someone homeless in Australia. Overseas, you would have a lot of people also who are homeless. So you are supposed to feed a person a day.
A person a day.
Yeah.
So do you have to go out and find somebody that you can give food to during the day?
In Australia, I would assume you would, or you go to a body that looks after the homeless people.
Right.
Like, any of the bodies, you can collaborate with them. But in Egypt, I grew up in the Middle East, but I remember as a teenager seeing something called Ma'idat al-Rahman, which translates to Table of Mercy.
All right.
And the Table of Mercy happens anywhere in the streets, all over Cairo and different cities. And the idea is it's a little tent that they put up to prevent from the elements.
Yes.
And it's long communal tables that offer meals to anyone off the street.
Right.
And it's done every single day during Ramadan.
Right.
There's a lot of volunteer work behind it and community work behind it, and anyone can run their own Ma'idat al-Rahman or Table of Mercy.
So there'd be a lot of preparation prior to Ramadan starting.
Yes.
In the first instant.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
So that you could have places like this for people who live on the streets who have no food, so that you can give them food.
Yes.
So you said also, I asked the question about, do you go and find someone on the street and you give them food? But you said you would connect with an organisation or someone like that who works with the homeless and give them the food that they can then give to the homeless.
Yes, either food, or if you're not making food, you can actually provide money that goes towards the food.
Right.
You are welcome to find someone who needs the food and feed them every day. If you're able to do that, that's also recommended. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot to consider, isn't there?
Yes.
When you think about it, it's not just about fasting for a certain period of time throughout the day. There are a lot of things to consider, like who you are as a person, getting to know yourself and what you can and can't do, and what, testing you out to see whether you can fast for a certain period of time without giving in.
Yes.
What happens if you get so hungry that you need to give in?
I think, if you really get that hungry and it's actually causing you, being sick or you can't function, And if you're in a workspace and you've got a function, I would excuse myself.
Yes.
I've had times during my career where I've had shorter days because I tell my workspace that I am fasting.
Yes.
And that I would like to leave earlier. I've had times when I've had to take a 10-minute break and go to my car and just close my eyes for 10 minutes because that helps.
Right.
You are really supposed to push through as much as you can.
Yes.
And if you're not, then, I would say you would break your fast, but I wouldn't recommend that because it's actually a test. Everything is a test.
We're always tested every day. We're tested about things and, getting up in the morning and doing what you have to do and focusing on certain things.
Yes.
So when you are working throughout the day and you might feel a little bit hungry, you still carry on with your normal duties during the day anyway, don't you? What's the feeling like when you know that there are people sitting in front of you eating and you can't eat? What's that like?
So for me, I've found that it doesn't really bother me, but it depends on how long you've been fasting, as in from your childhood or not, or if you're an early starter, or also what part of Ramadan it is. Because in the beginning, it could be a bit harder and you get the headaches from the withdrawal, like everything.
Yeah.
So I've always said the first 48 hours are the most difficult. But then your body's just used to it. I see people eating, it doesn't bother me. I probably am a bit of a coffeeholic, so the smell of coffee triggers my love for coffee.
Well, yeah, and if you're giving up coffee and your body's used to coffee, you can get some really big headaches.
Yes.
From the withdrawal of coffee.
Yes.
So how do you deal with that? What sort of things can you do, or are you allowed to do when you have those withdrawals?
So really, you're supposed to take it easy. If you are able to negotiate just the first day off, I would recommend it if you get withdrawal symptoms. Some people are strong. We're all different.
Different, yeah.
Yes. So, and maybe sleep in a bit more because that helps with the withdrawal symptoms.
I should try and sleep in, but I can't.
Try fasting. You will.
No, I probably wouldn't. I'd be laying there thinking, I need to eat. I've got to get out of bed. I've got to get up. And I look at the clock, particularly on the weekends. I look at the clock and I think, it's not time to get up yet. I'm sleeping in today. It's not time to get up. And I just do that because during the week I get up very early.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's interesting.
Yep.
But, okay, tell me a little bit more about the history of Ramadan.
So the history is all related to the religion, and that Ramadan actually is the month that the Quran descended upon Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And I recently was in an iftar event and I heard it's not just Prophet Muhammad. The Bible descended on Jesus in Ramadan as well.
Right.
There's and on Moses as well.
Right, okay.
So it's just an incredible month of spirituality.
Right.
That's always been around. I'm probably not the best body to talk about this.
Right. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, like, an Islamic body would be more in tune.
You've shared a lot of things just recently over the last days in regards to Ramadan itself.
Yes.
Talk about some of the things that you've actually shared so that people can get to understand what it's all about and why people do it.
So I've been sharing my views as an Australian Muslim living in Australia, and how Ramadan affects me and people who are similar to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've shared that, the first 48 hours are difficult, that we fast from sunrise to sunset and the meals involved. And I've also shared about the Table of Mercy, and I've shared about the dates and its history and the exemptions, and there's still more to share.
Yes.
But I've also shared about how Ramadan is a spiritual month, and that whilst I, as an Australian Egyptian Muslim, I am not veiled, and that's not something I'm looking at doing. Whilst when you are reading the Quran or when you are praying, you are supposed to be veiled, or if you're going to a mosque, you need to put on a headscarf.
Right. And that applies to anyone, really. You know, if I went in there,
Yes.
I'd be expected to wear a headscarf.
Yes, in a mosque, because it is a place of God. Yes.
What is the reason for covering up your hair?
It's modesty. It's really, you're supposed to be modest in your outer wear, and the head as well. It's in the Quran. You're supposed to cover up for reading the Quran and for praying.
Okay.
Yeah. And some people take it to the extremes, and some people just do the normal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All very interesting, isn't it? So how many years, or how many hundreds of years or thousands of years has it been going?
Ramadan? I would not even know. Lots and lots.
We could do a little bit of research,
Yes.
and find out. We might do that in the news break and find out.
Yes.
But so the history of it is it's come from. But what's it like for you coming to Australia, not fitting in, and then fitting in after a period of time, and then celebrating Ramadan as an Australian Muslim?
Yes.
What is it like?
So initially, any workplace I've worked in, but specifically a workplace that was mainly, where I stood out as someone who's fasting. People just wanted to understand more why I was doing it, what are the procedures. I initially would withdraw because I thought that was, attack.
An attack? Okay. So you felt like that when people were asking you, when they were curious?
It was a bit of an interrogation. So feeling not comfortable in your own skin happens to a lot of migrants in the beginning. The more I shared, the more people I found would lean in and want to understand more and really understand the true meaning behind a lot of things which are not really shared in the media.
Well, they're not. They're not. And that's why we're having this conversation today.
Yes.
So when your children do fast on weekends because they're at school during the week,
yes,
do they do a little bit of fasting during the day anyway, or is it?
So my children started a few years ago, and they would fast half a day, which is basically till midday.
Right.
And then have lunch. They grew stronger. They've seeing us, of course, fasting. Yes. So they want to do more.
Right.
And I think the trigger for them was a few years ago when I went back to Cairo to visit my parents in Ramadan, and they saw a lot of people doing it. So they were really interested to actually try it out first over there. And my son was younger, and it was actually longer days and it was hot, but we ended up spending a lot of time indoors. So that's when he started thinking about, I need to do this. I can see this and I understand this. But now he I think it's just picked up. Basically, I tell them to not fast. I'm the one who's worried about them kind of getting dizzy in school and all that.
And not being able to having that fuzzy head, that brain fuzz, because when you're hungry and your body isn't being fueled, you get that brain fuzz and you get that thirstiness and all that sort of thing. And particularly when you're not allowed to drink water. Is there a reason for not drinking water? It's
part of the package. But the thing is, I think in Australia, people are not in schools. It's not really understood well yet. So in Egypt, you'd find even younger than my kids' age, they're all fasting.
Oh, really?
But there's a huge awareness. And you know how when there's a lot of people doing the same thing, it's easier?
Oh, much easier.
Yeah.
And because you've got that support around you.
Yes.
When that happens.
Yes.
So you're it's okay because you're not ostracized, I suppose.
Yes.
You're a part of a team which is working together.
Yes.
And I suppose that's what it's about too. It's all about each person supporting the other person or people or group or whatever it is. And when you're a family. Do you invite others who don't have any family to come in and join you in your feast when you break your fast?
Yes, definitely. So in Australia, you'll find different communities organizing different iftars. I've noticed in Melbourne it's huge compared to Canberra, for example. But if you're doing it at home, you're also supposed to invite people. You don't have to invite people in every day because that could be exhausting for the cook.
Yes.
But you are encouraged to invite people. So I've actually started organizing my own iftars at home.
So explain iftar.
Iftar means breaking the fast.
Breaking the fast.
Yes, the meal you have when you break your fast.
Okay.
And it's getting friends, family, community together to break the fast together. So
Which is nice.
Yes, it's beautiful. It is actually the best time of year, like Christmas exactly.
Yeah.
Because you look forward to this humanly connections that we're all craving for in this digital world we live in.
Well, yes, and you're very good at bringing people and different communities together because you know what it's like not to fit in. So you want to see those who are sort of on the outer fit in. So a good way to bring them together is to bring them into your home at Ramadan time,
Yes.
when you're breaking that fast, to have food to eat with you.
Yes.
Which is really nice.
It starts with your home. But because I do run events, so I've done events, outside of the home, of course, because your home can only fit so many people. So that's where the power of events come in.
The power of events. And you do run some great events. And I went to one just a month and a half ago or something like that, 2 months ago, which was bringing cultures together, different cultures and parts of the community, businesses and just people with people. And it was an amazing, amazing event because I got to meet people I would never normally meet.
Yes.
And it was interesting to see the calibre of people that were there because they came from all walks of life and not just in close proximity to where you are, but from quite a distance away, some of them.
Yes. It was a great community event. I've run fusion networking events. I've started them up in Canberra and wish to continue the tradition in Melbourne. So our first one was late March, yes, and that was a great way to connect different business owners, community leaders, and to hear from them too, what community meant to them.
And you did do that. I suppose you could say you broke a fast, really, of people who weren't connecting.
Yes.
To connect, which would never have connected in the first instant.
Yes.
Which is quite interesting, but you are a people person and you just go around talking to anyone and meeting people and just having fun and enjoying. So it's really good. I think that gaining a better understanding of Ramadan, and I'm hungry now, thinking about food, but it's really interesting to have a better understanding of why people are participating in Ramadan.
Yes.
And who has a choice not to, and there is a choice to participate or not participate.
So it's really if you are a Muslim who wants to connect with a higher level of spirituality, you are supposed to fast.
It's expected.
Yes, it's part of the religion.